Hello and welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Seabass from WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee. He and I will talk Vanderbilt football. Today's podcast presented by Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We thank our co-sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Our news presented by Sutherland and Belk, an SEC sports-loving injury firm in Nashville. These are folks who'll shoot you straight on your rights and your options when you've been injured in an accident. Call them at 615-846-6200 to get your questions answered. You can also visit them online at sbinjurylaw.com. The SEC coaches have named their preseason all-conference team. No surprise here, the Big Three had representation. Kalijah Lipscomb, Vanderbilt's wide receiver, has earned first-team honors, while tight end Jared Pinkney and running back Ke'Shawn Vaughn picked to the second team. Defensive end Dayo Odingbo was named to the third team. Seabass appears on our guest line, which is presented by Boll and Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I look forward to sleeping on Boll and Branch sheets every night. I think I'm going on 6 years now. I had no idea what I was missing till I got them. They are fair trade certified. That means they've been made by people who are treated and paid fairly. You've got a 1-month guarantee. You can return them anytime within that window if you want to, but trust me, you're not going to want to. And once you get the sheets, get the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That's spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy. Get $50 off your first set of sheets. Also, stay tuned at the end of the podcast. I'm going to have a brief conversation with Mark Gent of Simply a Fan. There's going to be a special offer at the end of the show. There's a promo code there whereby you can get a discount on a trip to Purdue. Mark is trying to produce several other trips for football games, so I hope our listeners will take advantage of that offer. Seabass joins us now, as he does every week from WNWS. My friend, thank you for rescheduling this week for me. Practice has thrown our podcast schedule in quite a loop. I had to rearrange a lot of pieces this week. So I say that to thank you, but also to let the listeners know we're going to be on a more routine schedule starting next week, kind of get back to regular. The practice thing is just throwing everything out of whack, and I'm looking forward to a return to more normal times next week, which, by the way, we will, I think, be locked out of practice from here on. So it would be not a lot of new stuff to report. I will get stuff through sources anyway, which will migrate to the board. And I've got some good ones, but I don't know. It's kind of a relief, all those things. I look forward to getting not just back in routine, but practice just became so worthless in terms of access as it went. I mean, I learned some things at the first, but the one I went to Thursday was completely meaningless. So anyway, I'm gonna start with that. How are you, my man?
Oh, hey, Chris.
Oh yeah, you're still here, right?
Yeah. Hey, I'm here.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, it's been kind of rough, man. Because I can read in your writings you guys I really want to be able to tell you a whole bunch of stuff, but I can't because and we all know why. So, the limited access is even more so on the horizon. And, we understand, just so you know, understand that on your part. The question is it going to make a difference in a loss or a win? I don't think so, but it's not my job. I mean, I don't think they're doing it just to try something different. I think they have their reasons. But, it's like I said, for a program that needs the boost, socially, and in its own market, I think that it would help a little bit, but I don't know.
Well, they have to do what's best for them, and I have to do what's best for me. And I understand and respect that, but they're having a scrimmage Saturday. We can't go. They're having a media opportunity afterwards. And I know this is the case with a lot of other people. I've just got so much stuff going on. It's like, is it worth because a 5-minute interview is going to cost me 2 hours in time between coming,
Sure.
going, and waiting around. I think that's where it does cost him a little bit. There's going to be some opportunities where, okay, if I'm getting a scrimmage access and can see some plays, I will go. But if I'm not, I won't, because honestly, the coaches and the coordinators don't tell you a whole lot anyway.
No, they don't. And you know that going in. But I sure would like to know. So here's what I'm gonna try to get you to do, because I've read every report you've done so far. But just in a nutshell, best you can, you had to combine the articles together, combine everything you've seen so far. And I get that it's limited, but what the biggest takeaway or two maybe that you've seen so far from camp would be what?
Well, based on
I
what
know it's not really a fair
I've
question. I
seen,
get that, but
based on what I've seen, very little. My better stuff has come from sources that have given me some really good stuff. I think the two takeaways probably, or maybe three, would be I think that they have settled on an offensive line pretty quickly, which is one of the more important ones. I think number two, although you and I had a conversation about some concerns here just when we talked earlier in the week that we can get into if you like, I think that the increased depth or perceived depth along the defensive line should make a difference. And three, I think Chris Pierce is the guy in terms of any individual whose stock has probably risen more since the end of last year. I thought that he was going to fall off into oblivion with all those young receivers and him doing almost nothing on the field in terms of catching passes. And I know that his reputation for blocking has been good. His Pro Football Focus grades did not bear that out. Now, I don't know if the coaches were right in their opinion or PFF was, but I saw their grade for him in pass blocking. From what I remember, it was not good. So he's the guy that I thought, I had pretty much assumed that he would fall off into oblivion. I think it's anything but the case with him based on the things I hear. So I think those are the three things that, having no more time to think about it other than the time since you asked me the question, that probably stand out the most.
and with Chris Pierce, does he look trimmer? Does he look faster? The hands look better. He's running better routes. What's the difference? I mean, what has been the noticeable difference from your sources and what you've seen?
What I am told is that he's faster.
I mean, he's a heck of an athlete. He's a big frame dude too. You know, if they can get that out of him, man, get more speed there. I mean, to go with what they already have, that's pretty exciting. And of course, the news of Cam coming back seems like that he hasn't missed a beat, and they expect him to be an immediate contributor. In fact, in that top three, that's a really good sign, because I mean, one thing that I think we would all agree is that as far as explosive playmakers, is that Cam has the he seems to me to be that guy, maybe more so than any, that after the catch a, I don't know, maybe a hitch or a 10-yard slant and do more with it than anybody.
I've said this before, I think on the podcast and for sure on the website. I think maybe the underrated storyline for them is guys like him and Pierce and Amir Abdur-Rahman and Bowler. I think that the difference with this team, or one of the more underappreciated storylines beyond the big three, who are phenomenal, is the fact that they have, I think, more SEC quality players in terms of pass catchers than I ever remember. So again, I think if they get an injury to the big three, it's potentially devastating in some ways, but maybe not. Like if it's Kalijah Lipscomb, I think that they've got other guys who can step up and be really good receivers. If it's Pinckney, that would be harder, but I think Ben Bresnahan's a really good tight end from what I've seen. So I think that's the one thing out there. Nationally and regionally, you hear about the big three. I think that's what I see is where people maybe have slept on them or don't know, that I see with my eyes, is I think they've got a really good supporting cast on offense behind those guys.
Man, that's great. And, of course, a huge chunk of that's going to be if this team can find the right cat to pull the trigger, be our signal caller. And what's real interesting to me, Chris? And look, I get it. It depends on when you see them because they've been rotating it so much. But, I mean, look, there's Adams' article. And then next thing you hear, don't sleep on that Deuce is doing so well. And then of course, depending on what day of the read you read an article, somebody's getting the reps with the first teamers and whatnot. I mean, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, we're August. What date is the date? The 16th, Chris? Is that right? I think it's the 16th.
Correct.
And do you think we're any closer to knowing who the starter is? Do you think that Derek and Jerry and all these cats, you think they have a general idea right now that if today were the game, they'd know who would be getting the snaps?
Well, if they do, they're not saying, and I don't necessarily blame them. And I'm going to give you the big disclaimer that I'm not the coaching staff, and I don't know how they think through things. But from little things that have been said in interviews and some details that I've got in the back of my head that I've gathered from sources, as of August the 16th, and look, this may change in a week, or it may not, I don't know. If I had to guess a starting quarterback between what I have heard and perhaps, and maybe this is confirmation bias, maybe reading through the lines of some stuff they said is a false flag, but my guess is it's not. I think right now Deuce Wallace is going to be their quarterback if they had to name one today. Again, it could change, but that is my guess from what I have heard and specifically some things that I have heard coming out of scrimmages.
And see, this is what's interesting because I knew who you were going to say, all right. And I think anybody who's listening to this, because they'll be anticipating, I think he's going to say, and I think they'll all think the same thing. Here's what's intriguing, though. I mean, we know one of them clearly has the bigger arm. It's not Deuce Wallace. There's nothing wrong with his arm, but it's not the bigger arm. And one of them is more mobile than the other. And both of those check marks are big things, and that's Riley Neal. In-game experience, though it may be in the MAC, it's more than Deuce has. So to have those things, those check marks, experience, size, strength, arm strength, and mobility, my question to you is, what is it about Deuce Wallace? I mean, I understand intangibles being what they are, but what is it about Deuce Wallace who doesn't have those check marks in it as far as those boxes in the comparisons of those two that would trump Riley Neal's advantages?
Again, this may be me reading through things, but it seems like what I have heard that leadership and command of an offense are a place where he's got an edge. I was told by a source last week that his arm is maybe a little bit better than people think, that he threw the ball better last week, I think, than they even think. And I think he's accurate with the ball. I think he's used to being able to scramble around and maybe improvise a little bit. I think it's just things like that in terms of who do you trust to do things in a given situation. And again, Riley Neal has not had the benefit of playing with these players for 3 years like Deuce Wallace has. I just think it is things like that in terms of command and leadership where I suspect he's got the edge. And people are probably going to hear that. I think everybody thought, well, Neal's going to win the job, and he may still. I just think Deuce is a little bit better player than people think. People are probably going to say, oh, we want Neal to win the job. He's got the better arm. He's got a better talent. Well, that may be the case, but I don't think that Deuce Wallace is chopped liver either from what I have heard.
Well, and it's not even a matter of Deuce being chopped liver. It's just, I mean, those things that appear that, on the surface, the check marks that Neal has are pretty big issues. I mean, especially in this conference, that arm strength. And look, this is not me saying that Deuce can't do anything. I don't know that, not at all. And all I care about is who's best for this team and who helps them win. But I mean, it's just a little bit strange because normally when a player, has proven game experience, you talk about leadership, the proven game experience, arm strength and mobility on the other candidate. I mean, the intangibles and the leadership and just being around those guys must be really strong with Deuce Wallace, that the connection with those receivers and just the routes that they've ran over and over must be extremely strong to be able to trump the advantages that Riley Neal has.
Well, the other thing, too, and I think this may be the biggest thing of all, The turnover differential in the last scrimmage was pretty large from what I've been told. I think that he may be the more trustworthy option in terms of ball security.
Right. Well, that's a very big deal. Now, okay, now here comes another question, though. Look, we've been burned before. Now we hadn't had to worry about it in the last couple of years because we had an NFL caliber quarterback. But whoever it is, Deuce Wallace, Ronnie Neal, I don't care, whoever it is, how short is that leash, Chris? We've heard it before, and it wasn't true. But what about this time around? Is this a thing you think the staff has learned its lesson when it comes to that? How short is the leash, especially coming with Georgia right out of the get? How much wiggle room you think whoever the quarterback is has?
That was something I was thinking about today. I have no idea because all we know is the last 3 years they have had quarterback locked down going into camp. There was never a question about it. This is the first time that Derek has dealt with that since his first year or two, and we all remember the quarterback carousels. Although I guess he did do it with Shermer's sophomore year with the Wade Freeback running quarterback nonsense that he did in the South Carolina game. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that now that it's closer than it would have been the last couple of years, if he gets an itchy trigger finger like he did a couple of years ago, that's an outstanding question.
And the other thing is, you got to get a little bit nervous about is if there's an overcorrect. You say, okay, well, I was too sporadic with my decision making. I tergiversated a little bit, and and it certainly didn't work. And I said I was going to do one thing and I didn't do the other. So now, one wonders, okay, well, if whoever is not working, I'm going to stay with them too long because I don't want to take that chance. Maybe they're close to turning the corner when it would be necessary to make that change, but might be a little gun shy to do so because of last time.
This is an aside. I think coaches get put in a no-win situation at times because if they make a change, then the narrative becomes, well, he said he was going to go with this guy and he didn't. But if this guy comes out and goes 3 for 18 with 3 picks, then he's an idiot for not making a change. Now, again, there have been times that I've disagreed with Derek. I thought the Freeback thing a few years ago was silly and just a real error on his part. But that's the other thing, too, is you do have to wonder how much criticism coaches come under affects those kind of things. Because
exactly.
Coaches are human beings with families to feed and paychecks to keep. That's always the dynamic that's hard to predict.
On the line. Yeah, there's nothing on the line for you and me, but that's it won't be easy. But hopefully whoever it is establishes himself as the one to lead this offense, because I'm telling you right now, Chris, I just think this offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I really do, regardless of the trigger puller. I mean, there's too many opportunities here. I'll be honest with you, from an offensive standpoint, especially this is crazy, Chris. Now, you ever heard of anybody that had a team who has a ton of question marks on the offensive line in regards to production and depth, don't know who their quarterback is on August the 16th, and is about as excited as they've ever been for an offense? Now, how strange is that?
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's where I'm at, though. It's where I'm at. I mean, I'm thinking about it if I'm a defensive coordinator. I'm telling you right now, if there's a time to catch Georgia, good grief, it's right now. I'm not overly terrified of Georgia defensively on August the 31st. Not predicting anything. I'm just saying I think that this team has a real chance to move the ball up and down the field. I'm not talking 35 points, 450 yards, but I think they have a chance to certainly make a move on this Georgia defense. I really believe that. Well, what you gonna do? Ke'Shawn Vaughn?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Double Kalijah Lipscomb? You gonna double Kalijah? Sure, go ahead. No problem. Take him completely out of that game. No problem whatsoever. I don't care if he catches one pass the whole night, because you double him down. 80's running around. Oh, wait a minute. There's Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson's back. Wait a minute. Chris Pierce looks better than he ever has. Wait a minute. Amir Abdul-Rahman, and that big physical self is only going to get better. Wait a minute. Ben Bresnahan, who I know you like a lot, has a chance to be really special. And by the way, and I really hope, and I know you saw that, I know that you wrote about Javian Marlowe sort of being back at practice, but we love what Wakefield's looked like so far. And then, of course, this does not surprise me. I really like this kid's film. But from the limited experience you've had to see him and from what you've heard, it sounds like Keon Brooks is at least turning a few heads.
Yeah, I think Brooks and Marlowe are a really exciting duo for them potentially starting next year.
Yeah, me too, man. I really do. But, Jamari Wakefield's name keeps coming up, though.
Well, yeah, I have not seen Jamari do anything of course, I've seen 30 snaps, so who knows? I just don't think Jamari, and I don't mean to knock him. It's kind of like the spot that Blossingame was in a year ago. It's not that he was a bad back. It's just they had the other options that were a lot better through no fault of his own. I mean, Khari would have been the starting running back for many a Vandy team and turned out to be a good player. But Ke'Shawn Vaughn, he was not. That's kind of how I feel about Wakefield. And my sample size with Brooks is very minimal. But he's fast. And Marlowe, I know what I saw in terms of the talent a year ago. Again, he's just now getting back.
How would you describe his build?
Brooks, I don't know, maybe Ray Perkins or somebody like that. He's not a big kid. He's not tiny, but he's not a bigger back by any stretch.
Oh man, boy, you get me excited when you talk about Ray Perkins, son. You know that. Oh man. Boy, wouldn't that be something?
But Wakefield will be the guy, I'm sure, that starts. Just Wakefield doesn't have the gear, and he certainly doesn't have the shiftiness that Marlowe has had. Now, I don't know how much shiftiness Brooks has. I just know he's fast, and I just think those two kids, in terms of quick twitch muscle, that's how you get big plays, and I think both those kids have got some of that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And then, man, because look, I don't want to give Ke'Shawn 350 carries this year. You know what I mean? I won't do that. I mean, we'll certainly want to use him. He is the focal point of our offense, but can't completely rely on him. Some of these other backs are certainly going to have to step up, and if it's a couple of the freshmen, we'll see. But yeah, man, that's what I'm talking about, though. And hey, by the way, while we're talking about running backs, real quick, I got to ask a question because there's two players who both of them did well in this offense at Vanderbilt in their times here. There's no doubt about that. But are you surprised at how good, like, Khari Blasingame in Minnesota looked fantastic in the prison. Did you see that block on that touchdown run that he had? It's one of the most incredible things I've seen in an NFL game. And Trent Sherfield continues to look. He had a fantastic touchdown catch last night from Hundley on about maybe a 40-yard pass or something like that. Both of these guys looked really good. Of course, Trent made the team last year, and they're expecting big things from him as well. I mean, neither one of those players were superstars in this offense, but are you surprised how successful they've looked in an NFL camp?
No, Sherfield, I think, has always been able to deal with adversity with his dad and just that bad sophomore year. He's a tough kid. He works hard. He's, I think, a really good kid. And that's the profile of a kid that only helps himself. He does not do Antonio Brown things to set it, obviously different kinds of talent, but he doesn't do knucklehead things to hurt himself. And Khari is like the epitome of that guy. And I think that's an underrated quality, the ability not to self-destruct. Khari, my opinion on him changed when I saw his pro day. I was like, this kid has got more athleticism than I knew. And I think he suffered by playing with Vaughn because we looked at Vaughn for what he was. Well, sometimes that guy makes the other guys look worse. Ke'Shawn's an elite talent, and I think comparing him side by side to Vaughn, which is where by no fault of his own he fell all year last year, I think when we looked at it through that lens, we didn't appreciate what he had. So, no, I'm not surprised. I would not be surprised to see him make the Vikings because he is more athletic than I had perceived. And, again, he is the kind of kid who is a coach's dream.
he's just, I mean, look, he had some unimpressive runs. I remember him, I mean, and to think this is a converted linebacker, what a decision that was. That was a great decision right there. But I'll tell you, I don't know if you had a chance to see that touchdown run, the block and what he did on that play. But if you haven't, go YouTube it, man. You want to talk about effort. I'll tell you right now, if I were Minnesota, I mean, I would have he'd be the last person I cut. I'd try to find a way to find a player like that. He's showing you how badly he wants to make this roster. You love it. It's just a phenomenal football play.
Yeah, I think he will be on somebody's 53 at this point this year because, again, running backs are becoming more valuable in the screen game, and he can catch the ball and move a little bit, as he showed in the Baylor game, and just the overall athleticism, the ability to play special teams. I just think he's the kind of guy with the 53-man roster. He can do a lot of things, and I'll be very surprised at this point if he does not make somebody's roster at some point.
Real quick, with Ke'Shawn, I've heard the NFL comparison to him for him, because that's what people like to do, and that's fun. I do the same thing, but the name that has come up, and I'm not calling him that, but I'm not saying he can't be, though, by the way, but the name that keeps coming up is Ezekiel Elliott. What do you see?
Elliott's bigger than him, right?
Is he?
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I perceived he was. Well, here's one thing. Elliott is not much of a pass catcher. I think Ke'Shawn is going to be used more in the screen game this year, which I think is really smart. I think that saves you some wear and tear. You probably don't get hit as hard in space like that as you do running through the tackles. So where did you see the Zeke comparison? I've not seen that yet.
I've seen it a couple times. Just Google searching Ke'Shawn and NFL prospects. I've seen it a couple different times that the comparison was him. I mean, I think people are starting to realize just how elite he is. I'll tell you right now, I said it a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, if he played for Texas, Ohio State, somebody like that, if he played, for Clemson, I mean, everybody would be talking about that dude. I mean, because they are anyway. Even SEC fanatics of other teams, they will tell you, man, that Vaughn. I mean, ask a Florida fan what they think about Ke'Shawn Vaughn.
Okay, Zeke is 6 foot 225. I'm going to look up Vaughn's official height and weight while we're going, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, the opponent really doesn't matter. He's an effective runner. There's not a lot he can't do. And I agree. I think it would be a huge upside to use him in the screen game, and also some of our faster backs as well. Love to see them get in open space and Key just. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot of complaints other than the nagging injuries. I don't have a ton of complaints about it. When you break his game down, there's not a whole lot not to like.
Okay, they list him at 5'10", 218, so it's not a big difference. And I don't think as a running back, 5'10", 6 foot, that doesn't make a difference. I mean,
nah.
In fact, you might want your running back to be a little bit an inch or two smaller. He's just that much harder to spot coming through a hole in a crowd.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like sidewise, 6-7 pounds difference. That's not much.
No, and like I said, I think he probably catches the ball better already.
Yeah, and
that doesn't. Let me be clear. That doesn't make him a better back, and his track record isn't as long. But I was thinking about this today, and by the way, it seems like every time he's picked second team, he retweets that and takes some kind of motivation for that. I was thinking, like, when you pick teams, there's different ways to go about it, all SEC. Don't you have to make a pretty good justification not to pick him first team all SEC, given how much more productive he was per touch than everybody? And given also, this is what I say is hypocrisy. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, this guy for Georgia and Alabama is a better back when they produced lesser numbers, and the same voters put a lot of their blockers on the all-SEC team and didn't put any of his. So I'm like, pick a lane and stick in it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because, I mean, honestly, from a production standpoint, wouldn't you say the top two would, or at least returners, would be Vaughn and Roundtree, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, just turn on the film. I think you look at him, and there's nothing when you watch him, there's nothing flukish about what he's doing. He's just
Mm-mm.
phenomenal.
He was an NFL running back playing in college last year. Is what he was.
Yes.
It's just. I mean, that's just the simple fact of the matter. That's a starting running back in the NFL right now, who happens to still be in college.
Yeah.
Now, do I think he's Ezekiel Elliott? Look, Zeke's one of the 3 best running backs on planet Earth. So, I mean, we like to do NFL comparisons. That a lot of that has to do with size and playing style and all this other stuff. But I guess what I really like about that dude, man, is he keeps a chip on his shoulder, and I'm all right with that. Because like you said, it seems to fuel that guy. Hey, whatever it takes. Yeah, I don't care whatever his muse is. If it's criticism, if it's being looked over, whatever. It keeps him focused, keeps him mad. Keep on reading it, brother. Keep doing it.
Well, and I sense he's a little more mature than he was last year, which I don't think will hurt him at all.
Yeah, he did a few things on social media that weren't particularly piquant, to be real honest with you. Said a few things. I pointed one of them out to you one time. I've never worn that hat before. I've never been in those shoes. I don't know what that's like. But you know what? I think you're probably right. But I don't want him to lose that edge. I mean, it serves him well. It serves him well. And if that's what it takes to get the most out of him, it works for me.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that we barely got him in media settings a year ago. But hey, my man, we've got about 30 minutes left, and I've got some really good mailbag questions. So let's get into those, please.
Okay.
Our mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. If you need home, auto, motorcycle, renters, landlord, or life, or commercial insurance, Josh is a guy to contact. Give him a shout at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at jdmintonhq. He is my insurance agent. Give him a try. I believe you'll be pleased. And contact Josh, too, about helping out for Camp Horizon. That's a camp for kids with cancer that he helps out with, and they are looking for sponsors. Hopefully some of you will step up and help him there. Mr. Vandy says, which of the position groups concerns you the most right now?
I don't know how not to say offensive line. I mean, I know they've got their 5, and that's awesome. But this team is going to go as far as this offense can take it. I mean, there's going to be times we're going to have to win shootouts, and I think they're capable of it. But we can talk about Riley and Deuce and all this, but none of this is going to matter if that offensive line is a mess. That's just the bottom line. And I mean, it looks like at this point that they've got their 5, but that this is an offensive line that simply Chris, I mean, it just cannot have injuries. It just can't. It'd be crippling to this offense to have injuries on the offensive line. And look, anybody can say that. For us, it's particularly true. So because of that, I mean, there's nothing if we don't have the offensive line intact. And it's just the one that I keep going back to. So I'm going to say O-line. What about you?
Yeah, because the depth situation is a little precarious and the new combination. We've talked about that one. I think there's 2 more that stick in my mind. You brought this up when we talked, and I give you credit for this. You asked me this week, you said, does it not concern you that if this defensive line is supposed to be better, that the 3 guys that entered camp as starters are still the starters there? Like, should a guy behind them not have leapfrogged them? I thought that was a good point.
Or at least pushing them extremely hard. And it's not a shot, at Cam and Drew and guys like that. But, I mean, production-wise, they've just been okay, and what if nothing else, we need to see somebody who's coming in there and pushing them every bit of the way, whether it's, Davion or whoever, pushing them to the point where they have the possibility of losing their job. I'm not talking about replacing James Manley here. I'm not talking about replacing Stephen Weatherly. and I'm not even talking about replacing them as starters, but absolutely pushing them to the brink. And we haven't really heard of anybody stepping up and doing that. And it makes me nervous because I know, I mean, look, dude, UT's backfield is loaded. Georgia's going to be able to run the football. But I don't care who's back there, if it was Swift or not, behind that offensive line. My great-great-grandmammy get 1,000 yards. I mean, we're going to be playing we're going to be LSU's offensive line. I mean, we're going to have to deal with it, Florida. So, I mean, it can't be the same as last year. It has to be marketably better, not just as good. It has to be marketably better for this team to be a 7-win football team. And, I need to see somebody pushing those guys. And at least so far, and again, it's limited exposure, but if that were the case, I would think that your sources would definitely have indicated that by now.
Yeah, I've not gotten one of these, oh my goodness, the defensive line is just leaps and bounds better. No, I think it is. I think that the depth will help them out. But they've got Cameron Tidd and Birchmeier starting, who have done okay jobs, but they're just not probably guys that you want starting on an SEC defensive line if you're going to be up near the top. Now, Odingbo, okay, he got named third team All-SEC by the coaches this week, which I think was a good sign, although we've never really seen him put it together other than really little bursts. So maybe the storyline there to watch is, does a second or even a third teamer emerge? That's another thing. Eddie Zen Turner was a guy that you kind of hoped you'd hear more about, and I just really have not. But one more thing that perked some ears this week, and just I might as well just say this from now on, just don't pay any attention to anything I say at inside linebacker other than Dimitri Moore is going to play a lot, because I keep saying this. I feel like they use a lot of options on the inside and rotate a lot of guys. And last year they didn't trust but 2 guys to play basically. And somebody asked this, should it not be sending up red flags that with all those guys that have taken all those practice reps, that they move a 5th-year senior who's only played outside to inside in the middle of camp? I mean, I don't think that at face value makes people feel any better.
Yeah, that's a little unnerving. There's no question about that. And we need some playmakers on the defense, Chris. We got a bunch of them on offense, but we need some playmakers in the inside linebacker position, the linebacking core period. I don't know if they're on campus. That's the thing. I don't know if they're on. I'm hopeful. I mean, one thing that I know about this staff, and you've known this about them because they'll tell you, they love length. They love length. And it's good to have that. It's got to be productive length too, and that's just been a position that's been hard. The linebacker position, we've had a couple of good ones in the last couple of years. We had one great one, no question about it. And then Jordan was really good, but we just haven't had enough. And it seems like we haven't had 2 or 3, or really even 2 super productive at the same time, much less depth.
Yeah, and something just occurred to me, and maybe it is my fault for not asking the right questions or prodding enough, and I'm going to do a little bit more of that this week. We're going to unveil our ultimate roster preview next week on the site, where I will go down every scholarship player. I'll do it by position and throw in a couple of key walk-ons too, and just tell people, okay, here's all the scholarship quarterbacks and then running backs and then receivers, and go on down the line until I've hit every kid on the roster who's on scholarship, and just say in order I think that these guys are going to have value this year in this order, 1 to 4, 1 to 8, or 1 to 12, or whatever it is for that group. And I'm just sitting here thinking about all the reports I've gotten from people from spring and fall, and really the only time anybody has said, hey, this guy's really popped and stood out is Odingbo. I've not had anybody say to me, and again, maybe it's there and I just not have dug enough, but nobody has come to me and said, oh, man, this guy just dominated today. This guy really has stepped up his game. I hear that some on offense, but I don't hear it for defense, with that one exception. And that, again, I will dig a little deeper next week, but now that I'm kind of working through it in my mind and verbalizing it, I think that you would have hoped to have seen somebody step forward to where when I talk to people, they're like, oh, you're not going to believe what such and such did today, or how good this guy was, or he's taken a leap. When I'm just asking people about what they're seeing, I would think if that story was there, that it would come to me without me asking.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the exact same way. Because in the past, when we've had those type players, we've gotten those reports. One of the most important things to me for a coaching staff when you analyze them to take a look at is player development. And I don't know if it's a combination of bad recruiting or missing, or what, but player development defensively, at least on the defensive side of the ball, outside of the guys like Zach Cunningham. Look, Zach Cunningham would have been a stud no matter where he went, right, Chris? I mean, doesn't matter who he played for, doesn't matter where he went. He's a star. He was a star the day he got here, and he was going to be. Jordan Griffin was a very good football player. The player development was certainly there. But the question that I have to ask on the defensive side of the ball is, Chris, where's the player development? Now, having said that, we've had some really solid secondary players who've come on and done well. But Jawan's another guy. Chris, Jawan was going to be great no matter where he went.
Yeah.
What I want to know is that other level player who needs that development beyond their skill set. And, they've missed quite a bit on that, I think.
Well, and they've had some guys like they had Josh Smith was a very high rated recruit. In fact, the highest they've had. They didn't really do much with Josh at all. It's weird. They have done tons better on the development side on offense. It's not something that I think any of us would have expected 5 years ago.
Yeah, and like from a stuff standpoint, I was pretty bullish on Emmanuel Smith. I thought he was really going to be one heck of a player. From a tool standpoint, and he did fine. But you can't hide the fact that when you're a highly rated recruit, the expectation is just going to be there from the fan base. You're just going to expect more than some cat that it came down to them in Tulsa. Obviously, but he just I don't know. I mean, there's just been a couple that I really thought would outperform. Their recruiting ranks or whatever, but just it seemed like the player development was kind of lacking on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm not knocking Coach. It just seems to be the case. I mean, because like you said, there's nobody popping right now on the defensive side of the ball because I do know that the sources that you have would certainly know. And if they had, you'd know about it by now as well.
I want to do one little follow-up comment to something I said a minute ago. Then I want to move on to the next question, which is timely given what we just talked about. But I did say that nobody had really popped. Sometimes on defense, it's a lot harder to notice. And maybe if I'd paid more attention, I would have noticed Zach Cunningham being a force right before he broke out. I didn't. I think on defense, a lot of times, it's either you're making eye-popping plays like sacks or interceptions or things like that, or your value is you're around the ball making a lot of tackles. That's hard to notice unless you're keeping records and everything, which a lot of times from where we sit at practice, it's really hard to see that. We're always behind the offense. So it's like a ball carrier or a receiver just disappears in the middle of the field. It's like a sea of shirts, and you can't oftentimes tell who made a tackle to save your life. And so all that to say, on defense, it's a little bit tougher and really a lot tougher, like for a linebacker to discern those kind of things. So I'll leave myself a little bit of an out with the comment I made, but this is a really good question from Jake CVU. What is Seabass's opinion on Derek Mason's use of red shirts? Josh Smith should still be here, in my opinion. And seeing as Orgy's red shirt was burned, I fear the same for him. Josh had his red shirt burned for a couple of tackles, and Austin's was burned for 4 tackles. Seems like our presumable stars won't ever see a chance for a red shirt senior season. Cam Johnson will get a 5th year only due to injury in 2018. Now, I will start with one little nitpick there. I don't think that Cam Johnson is a fair comparison because Cam was playing I think that South Carolina game, he'd been on the field almost the whole time before he got hurt. So he was working himself into relevancy. I think the rest of the question is totally fair.
Yeah, me too. And, it's kind of weird because, of course, one thing that is going to change things a little bit, I guess, is the opportunity for them to play a little now. You know what I mean? The opportunity to showcase with the 4 games. The redshirt rule, you can still play 4 and still be redshirted. But it's kind of interesting, Chris, because, some of his predecessors, it was like the opposite. Now you're thinking sometimes, okay, why don't you redshirt this dude? And then beforehand, we were like, why don't you play this guy, and play him more and get more out of it? It seems like Derek's kind of been the opposite end of the spectrum from what he came what we before him.
Well, and I was thinking through this today. Sometimes you can defend those decisions by saying, well, if a player is that good, then you may not get the 5th year anyway because he may go to the NFL. Well, if you're sure a player is going to be that good, then he's going to pop out enough as a freshman to see the field more than the 24 snaps or whatever Orji got on defense last year. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. And by the way, speaking of Orji, I know there's a lot of hope for him to be one of those major contributors at linebacker. What's been the thought process for him so far in camp?
I go back to them moving Peart from outside to inside. I just don't think that does not sound like a ringing endorsement of the coaching staff for that group of players, because I would think this was a chance that Orji could really step up and seize that spot. And here's another thing that concerns me. We've always said that Peart was better cast inside than outside because of his build. But I've never walked away from a practice going, man, Caleb just dominated today, or a game or anything like that. So again, the question is that they've raved about him and says he's changed the dynamic of that room. I'm just curious to what they've seen that I've not seen. And again, we're limited in practice this year, but has he just turned it into this, dynamo overnight where we've not been watching to where he's that great that it's worth the move and costing other guys time? And by the way, he's having to absorb a whole new position and some different things like that and a different look on the field. We've seen Oren Burke struggle with being moved around. Now, Oren was a more dramatic example because he had a different role every year, but Oren was a 3rd-round pick of the Packers, who frankly didn't have a good senior year, and I think that probably had something to do, in part maybe, with him being jerked around. I just wonder if this is the same type situation. I mean, I think that Caleb better be a darn good player for them to shake this whole thing up, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, either that or they just don't think those other guys are any good.
And I hope that that's not the case, but I don't know what else to draw from. I don't know what other conclusion there would be.
I would have understood that a lot more had they done that in the spring.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Okay.
By the way, did you realize we're 15 days away from kickoff?
Oh, I know. It's crazy. Thank God.
Man, 360 hours. We're at about 360 something hours. Man.
Ann Arbor asks, what would you guess requires more effort as a lineman? Blocking for a quarterback who knows the playbook but has limited live action experience, or a quarterback who's had years of live game experience but didn't know the playbook as well?
Man, that is first of all, it's a phenomenal question, and it's a difficult answer in this sense. I'd much rather block for a guy that I knows what's going on around him. I can trust where he's going to be. I understand pockets break down and things happen, but man, when he's off, nothing else matters. When he doesn't know what to do, when he doesn't have command of that offense, doesn't matter if you're doing your job. You want the highest skill set you can possibly get. But if you can't trust a quarterback from one play to the next,
to be erratic in his decision making and where he's supposed to be, man, that's too much. That type of football schizophrenia is too much to deal with for me.
Vandy Doors, Ned, asked you to predict the results of every game this season. Since you were driving and don't have the schedule in front of you, I'm going to give them to you one by one. And you just tell me win or loss, okay?
So I didn't have to tell you that I was driving. Y'all can hear it then.
I can hear it, yes.
Well, you got to do what you got to do.
I'm just glad we didn't hear a wreck. Let's say, okay, Georgia, win or loss?
Are we doing simply wins and losses, not scores or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, he said results of every game. I'm going to – look, we've got 10 minutes left. We've got other questions to get to. Let's just go win or loss. If you would like to elaborate on a couple of these, that's fine too.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. You ready?
Let's go.
Here we go. All right. I know who the first game is. That's Georgia. I mean, I can't come on here and predict the win. If I do, nobody's going to take me seriously. So I'm going to go with a loss.
Purdue on the road.
Lord, forgive me, loss.
LSU.
Loss, but don't be surprised if Vanderbilt pushes them to the brink and possibly wins, but I'm going to go with loss. I think they start 0-3.
Northern Illinois.
Win.
At Ole Miss.
Win. I'm sorry. And look, Ole Miss probably should have won that game last year, but they've completely lost their entire passing game. Their quarterback and all their top targets. Scotty Phillips is going to have a monster year for this team. They get Memphis in week 1 as a major test. I think Ole Miss, I think they're in trouble this year.
UNLV.
But definitely win.
Missouri.
The game's in Nashville this year, right?
Correct.
Man, if Kelly Bryant hadn't made the transfer to Missouri, I would say a win without a doubt. Not without a doubt, but I would be more comfortable saying win. But when you factor him in and you factor in Roundtree's ability, that's a lot for our potentially porous defense to stop. I want to say win. I'm calling loss.
At South Carolina.
Well, just like I do, it doesn't really matter what's going on in the season. We just don't beat South Carolina. Got to go with the Cox here.
At Florida.
Biggest win of the year for the Commodores. They lose to lesser teams than Florida this year, but I've seen them play some knockdowns, row downs down in Florida. We've even won one down there. I think this game. Vanderbilt's had their chances against Florida, even in the last 2 years, had a chance for a fourth down stop to win a game. And then last year, I'm convinced if Key doesn't go down, they win that game. They play their best game of the year. They get a win in the game in Gainesville and shock the world.
You know where that game could be interesting? Well, 2 places. First of all, you saw what happened last year when Vaughn was healthy and in that game. It was very different. Number 2, I think Dan Mullen has got a Title IX scandal that has been bubbling underneath the surface, that there are several reporters that are on top, and that is going to be one thing that's going to be difficult to expose because of privacy things, and I don't know exactly how deep it goes, but I think they have been trying to keep a lid on that for a while based on some people I have talked to. You know as well as I do, sometimes when you have a season blow up because of off-field stuff, it blows your on-field part up too. And I'm interested to see, as you know, Florida's not exactly had a collection of Boy Scouts down there in the past, with all apologies to Tim Tebow. And sometimes when the wheels come off the field, they do on the field too. There's a lot of time between now and that game. And I think that's the one that, and I think Mullen is a really good coach. I don't think much of him as a person, but I think he's a great coach. That's the one X factor is what happens between now and the end of the year with all that stuff. Because if that blows their season up, we saw Vandy could compete with Florida a year ago when it had the full deck.
So are you willing to take that lead?
No, it would strain my credibility to pick them to upset a top 10 team at this point of the season. So I'm not going to, and I think it's probably unlikely. But I'm just saying that might be something to watch. Now, having said that, some coaches know how to manage chaos, and he may be one of them. But I'm just going to throw that out there for everybody to keep in their back pocket between now and November the 9th.
Okay, all right, I'll ride with that. Next game, Fat Man.
Kentucky and Nashville.
In
East Tennessee State.
loss.
Sure. And at Tennessee.
Man, is that really a question? Come on. Tennessee, I'll tell you something. They are really getting hit hard by the injury bug right now. They just lost Emmett Gooden for the year, and that is a major loss for them. They were expecting to build that D-line around him. That's a big loss. The Allen kid getting hurt, going down is a big loss. They're gonna have to have Wanye Moore starting at left tackle, so they're gonna have a couple freshmen on that offensive line. Will they get Trey Smith back? Who knows? Yeah, what I expect them to be a better football team this year, but I think that the injuries are kind of really hurting them. Vanderbilt's a better football team here.
I think you and I agree on every game but one, which is Florida. And again, I have told you to kind of – that's got an asterisk next to it right now in case things go crazy. So I think you and I see this team a lot alike.
Well, you know what that means then, don't you?
It means we're both wrong.
No, a brilliant dude that knows what the hell he's talking about.
Well, way to pat yourself on the back.
Oh, I've been doing that, Chris. Of course I kid. Yeah, I think so. I think we see about the same.
I've only got time for a couple more. Apologies to Vandy Doors he has asked a question about Vandy athletics, what it looks like in 5 years. I promise I am not putting him off out of disrespect. That's a huge question. You and I usually have about an hour, and we've usually got about an hour and 30 minutes worth of stuff to talk about. That one is going to deserve its own podcast. Let's make a gentleman's agreement right now that we will spend half our show next week talking about that one, okay?
Well, I mean, I'm nobody's gentleman, but sure, here's my gentleman's agreement. You got it.
All right. I'm going to get in one or two more.
Okay.
I like this one. Foghorn says it's December 2019, and we're sitting at 7-4, preparing for a bowl opponent. Which position group most outperformed expectations? Offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, or secondary?
Okay, we're going to have to do the whole question again because I got stopped. You said we're 7-4, getting ready for the bowl game. What happened to the UT game?
I don't know. I was wondering that too.
Yeah, that kind of threw me off to the rest of the question. So if you will, can you give me that one more time?
If they are in that position at the end of the year, which group has outperformed expectations? Offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, or secondary?
Oh, okay. That's easy to me. Thank you. By the way, whoever asked that question, that's a really good question. I think it's an easy answer, though, for me. That's the defensive line because I'm assuming that he forgot about the 12th game, but they would definitely he would favor them over in Tennessee. So I'd say we're 8-4 at that time. If we're 8-4, then that defensive line stepped up. Then they didn't get railroaded by some of these outstanding running games and offensive line, and they held their own, and they won a couple games that maybe people thought they weren't going to win. And their ability to not get gashed and give up 550 yards in a game and keep our offense off the field, then that didn't happen. So we were winning games.
Conluck asks, what positions are needed for the last few spots available in this year's recruiting class?
Well, I mean, we all know for sure that they want to get another running back in this class. I really don't want to see them reach. I really hate that they missed on a couple of running backs that they missed, especially those top two targets. But I think they have a good one. But I know that they want one more, so that certainly is the case there. They've clearly been addressing the offensive line in this class. So, a couple of those guys look like they need a little weight put on them. I sure wouldn't mind like a 325-pound cat. You're not 345, 305. That's bigger and needs less time to develop. That would be nice. And then, of course, the thing that I don't think we can have nearly enough of, Chris, and the thing that we don't nearly have enough of, and that's pass rusher. I mean, I don't care what they've got so far. This team needs pass rushers. We just don't have them, and we need them. So another running back, a pass rusher, and, I don't think you can have enough offensive linemen. Give me another offensive lineman.
My friend, it is time to go for today. I know you've got something to get to. Tell people your Twitter account, how they can listen to your show, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're welcome. Secondly, you can find me on Twitter at Cheap Seats Bass. I love to talk all things doors. You can find me at 101.5 in Jackson, Tennessee, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. on Newstalk 101.5 FM and online at WNWS.com.
Mark Gent joins me now. He runs the organization Simply a Fan. Mark and I have known each other for probably a quarter of a century now. Mark's a good friend of mine and really pleased to talk about his business, which Mark is going to explain. Mark, thank you for joining our podcast today. And let's start with Simply a Fan. Tell us what that's all about.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me on. So last year, we launched Simply a Fan, which is a locally based here in Nashville, family-owned sports, travel, and adventure company. And we are excited. Thus far, we have provided primarily baseball adventures to ballparks around the country. And we're excited about expanding that, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, I know of one ballpark that you took some people on in June. It was a ballpark I was at. You took a group of fans to the College World Series. I know that was very enjoyable. And so you're off the ground already in terms of the Vanderbilt market, but you got another trip coming up in September. Tell folks about that, please.
We do. September 6th and 7th, Vanderbilt's first away game of the season. We're taking a charter bus road trip to West Lafayette up in Indiana to watch the Commodores take on the Boilermakers on the September 7th. And we're excited. We have a lot of people already signed up. We still have space on the bus, and we are just real excited to be able to mobilize the Commodore fan base en masse who otherwise may not go to the game or who may not want to have to deal with the hassle of driving or getting their hotel or buying their tickets.
Yeah, and that includes me. I have sometimes not gone to road games, for one, because of the cost. But another thing is you're trying to write and all the things that I need to do when I'm leaving a game, and I worry about falling asleep on the way home. You take all the hassle right out of that. People can come and sleep and enjoy the game and not have to worry about all those other things.
Correct. So for this, they can go on our website and buy or secure their spot and pay online, and they can, we take care, we've got the charter bus ready to go. We're staying at the Doubletree Hilton, which is about 10 minutes from the stadium, and tickets we have for the game are right behind the Vanderbilt bench between the 35 and 40-yard line. So my vision is for people who can just show up and go and enjoy the experience and the adventure and fellowship with other Vanderbilt fans and not have to worry about all the logistics that go into it.
Well, Mark, you do provide all the logistics from the transportation to the hotel to the tickets, but if folks already have, say, a hotel or tickets, you can still help them out, correct?
Correct. So if they need any of that by, like, say, a la carte, so if somebody already has a hotel and tickets and they're like, hey, I'd rather not drive, they can join the charter bus. If they're looking for a hotel in West Lafayette, because right now they're pretty hard to come by, need to hear from them by Monday in order to get a hotel with our group block. Or if somebody's already has their hotel and just says, hey, I'd love to sit with a lot of other Vandy fans to have this experience, they can be part of our group block of seats that we have.
Mark, you are very accessible. You have an account on our message board where you can interact with people directly. People can private message you from there, but they can also email you and visit your webpage and even message you on Twitter or see some of the things that you guys are doing there. Where are all the various places that people can reach you and find out about what you are doing?
So if they want to find out all the details about the trip page, go to simplyafan.com and look in the trip section. It's the top trip that they will see on the menu. They can email me, Mark Gent, at simplyafan.com, and that's Gent. Or if they just want to text or call me, they're welcome to do that, 615-579-5217. And they can find us on all the social media realms, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On Twitter, it's at simplyafan18.
Well, we're going to make this a Vandy Sports trip for the Purdue game. I hope a lot of our listeners and readers will join us on the bus. And Mark, if somebody out there is listening to this podcast or reading about us on the site, you have a special discount code that gives them some money off that Purdue trip. Tell them about that.
That's correct. Really appreciate you, Chris, and Vandy Sports helping promote this effort. So any Vandy Sports listeners, subscribers, followers, can receive $50 off their overall trip cost if they buy the full package. When they go to check out on the website and the promo code, enter Vandy Sports 50, and they will get $50 off if they purchase the full trip package.
Mark, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you on September 6 and 7.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
He's Mark Gent of Simply a Fan. I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We appreciate you listening. We will be back with more episodes later next week.